All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Bodybuilding Breakdown. I'm joined today by a man who needs, of course, no introduction in the bodybuilding space, Dave Palumbo. Dave, how's it going? Thanks for taking the time, man.
No, thanks for asking me to come on. And I've been. It seems like I've been on the podcast circuit recently. I've been just usually I don't do a lot of podcasts, but I decided, hey, you know what? It's Olympia time. It's the end of the year. Got to get the message out. So I've been doing a lot of. I haven't been turning people down. I've been doing podcasts. I think it's important to just you know give my opinion on what happened this past year and all that stuff.
You know, it's funny. When I first interviewed Bob, he said almost the exact same thing. I don't typically do a lot of podcasts, but in Bob's situation, he was facing a little bit of controversy. So he said sometimes you just got to come on and wipe the slate clean for people, put the proper info out there. So,
Right.
but I wanted to discuss actually a follow-up conversation to the last time I had Bob on my channel with Kareth Bajo
Right.
and Xavier Wills, mutual friend of ours.
Yep.
So we may as well just get right into it here. When it comes to the Olympia for certain divisions over the past number of years here, we have seen an increase in the number of competitors in certain categories, such as classic physique, such as men's physique, some of the women's divisions. You could easily have 55, 60 people in just one category, and it can make it seemingly very difficult to run the show when you have that many competitors as one factor when it comes to running the show. So the conversation that I had with Bob was that he put forward to the powers that be a cut round or elimination round idea. Basically, it would be an event that would happen before prejudging, maybe the day before prejudging, and essentially that would only allow maybe the top 15 or 16 competitors to make it to the actual prejudging. And you wouldn't have such a mess basically for prejudging and prejudging especially. So I wanted to get your take on that.
I agree with him in the sense that there needs to be an elimination round. I just don't think it should be done the day before because now you're turning a 2-day show into a 3-day show. So that's not good for the athletes. What needs to be done, and they've already done this before. They do it at nationals. When I used to do nationals back in the 90s, and there would be 35 people in the heavyweight class at the in the open bodybuilding, you would walk out. They would do lines. They would put like 6 or 8 guys at a time out there, and they'd do quarter turns. They'd have you hit the front double bicep, rear double bicep, maybe a couple other poses, and then you'd walk off. And then the next line would come out, and they would do that with all 35 guys. And then we would all be waiting backstage, and then they would call out your number, 15 numbers, number 25, number 82. And if your number was called, then that means you made the top 15. Now you go out there and you're going to actually do your 45. Back then it was a minute. You did a minute of free posing, each of the 15 guys. Then we went back out there and lined up, and they did the call outs, top 5 call outs, the 3 different call outs. And it worked great. Because guess what? Doing nationals, which is the equivalent of, I guess, doing like the Olympia, but it would be the equivalent for the amateur division, right? Because if you win the nationals, you turn pro, is a privilege. You've qualified for the show, but it doesn't mean that you have to pose there. It's not like a little league game where everyone gets to, their turn at bat, everyone gets to play the field. It's the best of the best. And if you're not in the best top 15, then you don't get to pose. You went out there, you did your thing, you qualified for the Olympia, you made it to the stage, but you just weren't good enough to make the top 15. And to be honest with you, they don't even score anyone after the top 15. Everyone who's 16 and after gets a number 16. So they're not scoring anyone after 15 anyway. So there's no reason to actually have them at prejudging to pose. So you have that elimination round right in the beginning of prejudging. Everyone goes backstage. The top 15 come out and do their 45-second, 1-minute, round of free posing. They bring them out. They do call-outs just like they do in the amateurs. It's no different. Sorry, you weren't good enough to make the top 15. You don't get the pose. It's not, like I said, everyone doesn't get a trophy. This is the Olympia. It's the best of the best. And if they did that, it would solve the problem instantly. Now, if you have, let's say you have like 18 guys in the show. You don't have to do an elimination round if you have 18 because that's kind of close. But if you go over 20, you should definitely have an elimination round. There's no reason to have that many people on stage, and there's no reason to do it the day before. You do it right at prejudging. That's what prejudging is for. And then at the night show, you bring back the top 15 to do their posing routines, and that's it. So, and the other guys don't even come to the night show. And that's a very simple solution. from what I understand, because I've talked to some people, I don't want to mention names, who all agreed with me that that would be the right way to do it. And they said that the people who put on the show wanted to give everyone a chance. But the truth is, I know that's nice and everything like that. You bring because these people are in the show, but it's not. It's the Olympia. It's not an amateur first time novice show, and so not everyone gets the pose. Sorry, only the best of the best do.
That's right. Dan Solomon during the 2022 Olympia actually specifically was boasting about the fact that this was the Olympia that had the most competitors. I think without really having the foresight of the ramifications of having that many competitors. Unfortunately, the fallout of that situation was a lot of unhappy competitors. So that would solve that problem.
Well, what happens is, you know what, you get audience fatigue too, because you can only sit for so long to watch a show. After
Oh,
like the
God.
beginning, everyone's all excited and oh, this is great, and then you go through 45 you know bikini competitors, and then you want to just go to sleep. You don't even want to watch the rest of the show. You're so tired from that taking so long out there that it's just not enjoyable. So I think they need to do this, to make the show run better, more efficiently. And I think that you're going to get a better response from the crowd. The crowd does not want fatigue. There's no reason why these prejudgings or these night shows should last hours and hours and hours and hours. Now, I thought they did a really good job this year, even with the amount of competitors they had. But I think if they do that elimination round, and like I said, it has to be done during prejudging. You can't add another day to this whole schedule because it's not fair to the competitors. I think that would solve the problem.
Okay, so 3 days would be too much. 3 days would be
Yeah,
too much, in your opinion.
it's not fair to have a guy peak 3 times. Come on, in 3 days, it's impossible. Impossible.
That's actually a good point. When you have the ones that would be the presumed top 15 or 16, you're asking a lot of them to peak 3 times. That is a very
Plus,
good point there.
more dangerous too, because you're dehydrating yourself for 3 days straight, and that's when problems are going to start rearing their head, and we don't need that.
No, what we're trying to do is we're trying to have a better athlete experience and a better fan experience.
Right.
And yeah, that 3 day peak that more dangerous, and it would just take away from the physique.
Yeah. It could be 4 days even. Think about it if you have a weigh-in too for like classic physique and stuff like that. So it could, or men's physique. It's definitely dangerous. So we got to eliminate that.
That is a very good point. No, that's something that would definitely have to be taken into consideration. So, from the fans' perspective, it would make for a better show experience overall. You wouldn't have audience fatigue, but you would have a significant amount of athletes that would not necessarily be able to step on the biggest stage in bodybuilding despite being qualified at this time.
Well, they would be on the stage because they're going to be on the prejudging stage. They're just not going to get more than a couple quarter turns and a few poses, which is really all they're getting anyway. If they're not making the top 15, right? I mean, yeah, they're getting the obligatory call out at the very end, and they get to do their 45-second, individual routine on stage. But you know what? If you're not in the top 15, why are we watching this? You're not getting a placing. So yes, it's nice to be qualified for the Olympia, but it doesn't mean that you're going to absolutely be in the mix, so to speak. And if you're not good enough to be in the mix, either because you just haven't reached that level yet, or maybe you missed your peak and you're a little off, then don't worry about it. You walk up stage, say, you know what, next year, I have to improve.
I wonder if it could affect outside of the Olympia some of the other shows that take place when it comes to the competitors that may consider competing one year to the next. If a classic physique competitor that knows they will not make, being realistic with themselves, I'm not going to
Right.
make that top 15 or 16 this year, could that actually deter individuals from competing at certain shows throughout the year? And could that affect
Yeah.
promoters?
Well, if you qualify for the Olympia, it means you won a show, right? So if you're good enough to win a show, you're not going to say, well, I'm not going to compete because I don't want to. I don't. In other words, you still won a show, so there's still an accolade there. You won money. You're validated, and you might say, you know what? I know I won the show, but I'm probably not going to place top 15 at the Olympia. But you know what? I don't care because I qualified for the Olympia and I want the Olympia experience. So that's why I'm going, and that's why people go. People don't look. The people who come in like 24th place know that they're not going to be winning the Olympia or probably placing top 5, but they're going there for the experience. Hey, I qualified. Not many people can say they qualified for the Olympia. I want to go and enjoy myself there and be, lauded as an athlete, have the the warm up suit and all the hype and hoopla they give all these people. But they also know that, you know what, I'm not. There's a very good likelihood that I'm not going to be placing in the top 15. So, I mean, what's the difference if you get a couple? If you just really all you're taking away from these people is their ability to do their 45-second routine in the prejudging. That's the only thing you're doing. But that's a big elimination because that if each person has a minute, say, because I think it's a minute in the pros, they have a minute to do their 45, and you have 40 people. Okay, that adds 40 minutes, to the overall, or I guess it would be 40 minus 15. It adds, whatever, 25 minutes of people having to watch people who they don't really want to see on stage hitting poses. So, people go to the bathroom, they leave, it kills the energy of the whole show.
Even during the live streams that we do here on YouTube, even on yours, I'm sure, the constant questions from the fans that are tuning in, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of viewers, over the weekend. People asking, when are we getting to this certain category? Have we seen this person on stage yet in this certain category? Right? It's constant. Right. So it would also allow, like you said, that audience fatigue to really be disallowed here.
I loved watching. I think about the men's open. How many guys were there? Like 12 or 13, I think this past year.
Yeah, wasn't very many.
So, when I'm watching the top 30, I'm actually enjoying myself. I actually sat there. I analyzed every person who came out and did their 45 seconds or a minute of free posing. I loved all the call outs. You know why? Because there wasn't too many. And so I can get into it. It wasn't like I didn't have fatigue. I was so into what they had up there because everyone was really good. And that's the way all the divisions should be. They all should be that good.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You made your return to the Olympia this year after a few years where you didn't make it there. How was your experience overall from your perspective? How do you think the athletes really took to the Olympia being back in Vegas? To tell me a little bit about that.
Well, I went last year. I went in Orlando. I drove there.
Oh, yes. Okay. Oh, well, that's right there for you. That's right. Yeah.
And I actually liked it a lot because it was close and I could drive and I had my car and I could do whatever I want. And it's a very convenient little setup they have there in Orlando. I thought it was very well done. However, the hype and hoopla in Vegas is, it is Vegas. It is what it is. I understand. I thought it was great in Orlando. I like the idea of moving it around, but I have to say that the hotel, I mean, is insane. Even though they lost my suit jacket and my shirt and tie, but the hotel is insane that they're holding it. And you feel like you're at the Super Bowl, and the theater was incredible. The seating is amazing. The view, I mean, I had really good seats, so I was right in the middle. So I had a very good experience, and I think a lot of the fans that I talked to had a very good fan experience there. They had a big venue to do the press conference in, and the expo was great. It was in the Las Vegas Convention Center, and the Resorts Hotel actually has an underground tunnel that goes from the resorts to the convention center, where they have this little, it's called the Loop. They're little Tesla cars that drive you through this tunnel to get you to the convention center, which makes it way easier to get there. In the past, we've always had problems with traffic and stuff like that. So I thought it was the best Olympia that I'd ever been to in terms of the logistics of it, the hype and hoopla of it, and just the excitement of it. So I think that Jake spent a lot of money, and he got his money's worth as far as I was concerned from a fan perspective and a media perspective. Is it profitable? I don't know. I don't know what his bottom line was, but I certainly like the idea of going to Vegas for the Olympia.
So that's the other thing about this potential idea for a cut round or an elimination round. The Olympia, Bob did some quick math for me. The Olympia essentially pays everybody's airfare, their hotels, some meal per diems, every single competitor that shows up at the Olympia.
Crazy. It's crazy.
So 360 competitors this year. If it cost $3,000 per competitor, right? That's over $1 million. I think it was like $1,080,000 when I actually did the math, right? That is insane.
I don't think it's $3,000 per person but it could be close to that. I think at least 2,000 would, 2,000 would be closer, but I think that's a lot of money to put up, right, for these competitors. And so, I mean, Jake is doing it right. I think in the past they didn't cover everyone's airfare and hotel. I think they only covered, like, I don't know how they decided whose they did and didn't, but this was he does it right. And so, like, if you want to go to the Olympia, it doesn't mean you're going to be on that stage, in the limelight. It means you have a chance to make it to the finals. And why not go? You got your whole trip paid for. So if Jake wants to continue paying for these guys, I guess he figures if I'm paying for all these guys and women, they should be able to pose on stage. But really, it doesn't matter. The fact that you're paying for them, Jake, is a feather in your cap because you're supporting the fact that they qualified for the Olympia. Doesn't mean that they have to be the center of attention if they're not good enough to make the top 15. So I think that you're doing what Jake is doing is he's doing them a great service, just bringing them in and treating them like royalty because they did qualify for the show. But at the same time, the show is about the best of the best, and that's what it's about. And sorry, if you're not the best of the best, you just don't get to be in the limelight, the whole time.
Yeah.
I think the exclusivity of the Olympia does need to be preserved, and it is an excellent way to do so. Now, one of the other points of the money factor, even call it, like you say, call it $2,000. Okay, that's still 750 grand. Quick math.
Yeah.
Now, what would you think about the idea of anybody that does not make it past the cut round, not necessarily getting their airfare paid, their per diem, their hotel? The Olympia potentially saving hundreds of thousands of dollars because you didn't make it to that big stage.
Here's the risk with that is that people might not come to the show. So, if they feel like they're not going to get paid for, and how do you really know? You're not going to. So, what you're basically telling people is lay out your own money and we'll reimburse you, type of thing. So, I don't know. It's a slippery slope, I think. Obviously, if I were Jake Wood, I would not want to have to pay for all those people. I mean, it's really not his responsibility. So, I mean, in essence, maybe cover the hotel rooms for everyone and then say, look, if you want your airfare reimbursed, you have to make the top 15. That might be something that he can do to save some money because, I mean, it is a little ridiculous, that he has to pay for everyone. And because as they add more and more shows, he's being forced to have to pay more and more airfares and hotels, which is not really, what he signed up for, so he's not making money off all the shows that they're holding. He's only making money off of the Olympia, right? So there's got to be, I think that there's got to be like I said, maybe only pay the hotels, let the people pay their own airfare. If they make top 15, you reimburse the airfare. I think that's fair.
That could be a happy medium.
European guys, especially, because if you're flying in from China, and think about what the airfare from China is compared to the airfare from California, which is nothing.
That's right. No, that could be a happy medium, but even if Jake Wood was to say, look, if you don't make it past the cut round, that's it. I mean, competitors pay for themselves to travel throughout basically the world in order to compete to make it to the Olympia.
The Olympia is supposed to be held at a higher standard. I think that's why they're doing it. Probably.
Absolutely. So it's a higher prestige for the competitors as well. Wouldn't a competitor potentially be more likely to pay their own way to the Olympia rather than, not more likely because you have to qualify, but you would be still inclined, I would feel, to make it to the Olympia. The business opportunities alone, the stage shots.
These guys, let me explain. I was a bodybuilder. As bodybuilders, we would gladly pay the promoter to do the show, even at the highest level, because we love bodybuilding. So, asking a bodybuilder, well, we're not going to pay for you to come to the Olympia. Are you going to still come to the Olympia? Of course they are.
Of course. Yes.
You don't have to pay for anyone. They'll all pay for it. That's just the way it goes. But, I think that Jake's trying to do the right thing to hold the Olympia up at a high standard, that he's rolling out the red carpet and giving them the VIP treatment. And I respect them for that. But at some point, when you have a division that has 45 people, 50 people in it, it's illogical to believe that he should be, the onus and responsibility should be on him to cover every single person,
So do you know if competitors were paid to go to the Olympia prior to Jake Wood's ownership of the Olympia?
There were people who's, remember back in the 90s, there wasn't that many people that qualified. And there was only like two divisions, men's bodybuilding and women's bodybuilding. And then they added fitness and then they added figure. It was still very small amounts of people. So I think when American media was running it, I don't think they covered everyone's, stuff. I think they might have covered, I know they covered everyone's hotel because they were holding it at the Orleans and the hotels were really cheap back then. It was like $59 a night or something like that. And I'm sure the promoters get a bunch of free rooms too. But I think this is the first time there's been this many competitors and this many divisions. Think about it. They've added in the last couple of years. They've added
Yes.
classic physique, men's physique, bikini, and wellness. So that's a lot more people that have been added in very recent years.
And that's why there is now, I think, a situation that the Olympia is in where they have to come up with a solution. And this could be a very viable solution. There's a lot
Yeah,
of logistics behind it, absolutely. But I was trying to think of how else they could really do it in order to have a balance between an athlete's experience and a fan's experience. I think it's the best
yeah,
way from everything that I've heard from, and a lot of fans are in favor of it as well. My comment section was
yeah,
overwhelmingly in favor of having
yeah.
this elimination round.
Yeah, I think it's just got to be done at prejudging, and I think that if Jake wants to put a stipulation on the elimination, meaning that if you don't make the top 15, I don't cover all your expenses. I wouldn't be upset. I mean, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I think the onus of responsibility for the promoter of the Olympia should be to cover the top 15 of all the classes. I don't think he should have to cover all of it. But you know what I mean? If he's getting like rooms comped to him or whatever, and he's getting really good rates on them because he's filling up the hotel for the hotel, then that might be a more viable option. Get everyone hotel rooms and just let them pay the rest of their own expenses if they don't make the top 15.
He might be able to put a person or a group of people in place in order to facilitate this travel, and he might be able to save himself the tax on being able to book it himself if competitors
Yeah,
have to do that themselves too. There's a cost associated with that, but there could be a potential there for a cost savings further
yeah.
to not having to pay every single athlete. So it's always interesting when it comes to the business of bodybuilding, and when I can have individuals like yourself on here and speaking with Bob, who was a wealth of knowledge. He certainly laid it all out there for me on some more of the business aspects. I always find it very interesting on how it's so influential on the experience for the athletes, the fans, and how all these things have to have checks and balances. And it's things that nobody really speaks about in regular conversation in bodybuilding here on YouTube.
Right. I mean, if you think about it, I mean, how much would he save if he didn't cover the expenses of everyone out of the top 15? Imagine you took all that money and you put it towards prize money now, right? So now
A lot of money.
that's a lot of prize money. You might even get the prize money for the men's open up to close to $1 million at that. So it's a compromise. Do you want to make the show more spectacular? Well, if you do, there's only so much money available in the budget, right? So if you do, you got to take it from somewhere, and it seems like that this might be a good bargaining chip to say, hey, look, we want to raise the prize money to a super high amount. The way we're doing it is, if you make it, you get paid. If you don't, you don't. That's all there is to it. And if you don't want to come because of that, then that's great. It's up to you. You don't think you're going to make the top 15 and you're like a top, 30 guy, then maybe you shouldn't come to the Olympia. You don't have to. And I think a lot of guys will come anyway, because like I said, they'll pay their own way anyway. And I don't think that will be an impediment to them not being there. And it will free up a lot more money so that they can raise the prize money. Because I think at the end of the day, that's the best for the athletes. The more prize money we give away for the Olympia titles, the better the sport and more appealing the sport becomes, I think.
Most definitely, most definitely. I would give it to see the books for what those guys, as a business owner, to see that. I would just, oh man, I can't even imagine. I can't even imagine. It'd really
Yeah,
be something.
yeah.
No, that would be cool. No, those are all really good points. Those are all really good points in the bodybuilding world. Well, other than that, we had a big announcement today, and this is the only other thing that I wanted to touch on. Was Chris Bumstead coming out and announcing that he will be competing in the Open at the Prague Pro now 3 weeks out. He was hinting at it leading up to the end of the 2024 season. Dave, what do you think about Chris actually coming out and finally doing an open show here? I mean, it was somewhat expected from some, but not necessarily assumed by others. What's your thoughts on Chris laying his legacy necessarily on the line?
Well, I think he's looking at it from this perspective. He just did his last Olympia. He's retiring ostensibly. Everyone, I always tell people, bodybuilders don't retire; they take breaks. That's what they do, especially when they're young, like he is. But anyway, let's assume he's not lying. Let's assume he's done. Okay, competing. I guess he figures. Look, I know he always wanted to do an open show. He's always talked about that. Sid was in Dubai this past weekend. He interviewed Hani Rambod. and he asked Hani, "Hey, would what's Chris's? Would Chris ever do an open show? You think? I know he's retiring this year." And Hani's like, "Well, you're gonna have to wait for Chris to announce it." So that was kind of like a little foreshadowing of what Hani knew was going to come, that Chris was going to do this show. And I guess it's a nice way to exit, right? I mean, I don't necessarily think that Chris could win the show, especially if you got guys like Martin Fitzwater who's going to be in the show. I think that Martin will easily beat him, but I think that he will be top five, and I think that it'll add a level of excitement, a layer of excitement for sure to the Prague show. Everyone's going to want to watch it. Everyone's going to want to see it. The videos are going to be all over. It makes the Prague show that much more important than it was before. It was kind of like an afterthought, a European tour show, as we call it, to qualify for next year's Olympia. Now it's become this big, can Chris Bumstead win the Open, class? And like I said, I'm going to try to break that down in a video I'm doing for RXmuscle. But at the end of the day, there are guys that Chris is. Look, Chris didn't, in my mind, didn't beat Mike Sommerfeld on that classic physique stage. Mike was a better bodybuilder on that day than Bumstead was. Bumstead was a better classic physique guy than Mike, and that's why Chris won the show. And he earned that win, no doubt about it. But if it was a bodybuilding show, Mike would have won because Mike was a better bodybuilder. So I think he's going to have a lot of trouble with these guys that are bigger than him, assuming they come in good shape. I don't know who's in the lineup aside from Martin, but I don't think he can beat Martin. And so, but it'll be nice to see what he looks like next to these guys up there. I think it'll be real fun.
No, last year at the Prague Pro, you had Michael Krizo, you had Nexzilla, Rubiel Mosquera came out and made his pro debut at that show after turning pro the day before, and you also had Samson go and do that show. Nathan Diasha, he was in Prague as well, yeah. But this year,
I don't know if any of these
also doing the show.
Right, I don't know if any of these guys are doing it. I know that Rubiel's shutting it down for the year, but it would be the fact that Martin's going to be up there. I mean, look at Martin's back compared to Bumstead's back. I mean, it's not even close. But it's going to be fun because Chris is going to look great. He's a fan favorite. He's tall. He's wide. He definitely won't be out. He'll definitely fit into the lineup there and he'll do well. But it's against the guys that are like on the Olympia level. I think he's going to have a lot of trouble with those guys.
Yeah, I think you're right. And Chris is a marketing genius, of course. He's actually training with Martin Fitzwater leading up to the show. They're buddy.
Yeah, I didn't know that. That's great.
Oh yeah. So he's taking this from a completely different angle, of wanting to step on stage in the Open. This is a friendly competition, which you wouldn't expect anything less from Chris at the end of the day, really, right? I mean, it's the one way that he can come out, smelling like a rose, no matter where the guy places in the lineup. Top five assumed, but yeah.
He's a very likable guy, and there's nothing, he doesn't talk bad about anyone. He's marketable, but he's humble, and so. And no one's expecting anything from him. I'm sure all his fans think he's going to win, because they think he's the greatest. But if you're a real bodybuilding analyst and you watch bodybuilding, you just know that these Open guys are just another level. It's like watching the classic physique girls and saying, oh, they should do the Open women's bodybuilding. They have nicer lines and they have a smaller waist, but then they stand next to these other girls and they're like dwarfed by them, and you just don't realize the size difference until you put them next to each other. So I think, like structurally, Chris will be fine. But when he turns around, he doesn't really have a big back, and that's really what they look for in the pros. And his arms are a little weak, so he's got the tiny waist, of course, and he hits the vacuum poses, and he's got really good legs from the front. He's got glutes. He can hang on the legs, but I just think his upper body is going to be a little on the small side. But who knows? He might, he's going to be a lot fuller. He doesn't have to make weight. He might come in a few pounds heavier. To me, it makes the show that much more exciting. As a press person, I love to try to handicap that show and then break it down when it's all over.
Yeah, like you said, he's got the aesthetics, and that does get guys much further in Open than it did, in previous years, no question.
Right.
But you got to have that size, man. It's going to be a good show either way, though. I'm really looking forward to it. Martin's probably going to take him out to lunch kind of thing, but it is going to be very interesting to see Chris on an Open stage. There's no question. Yeah. Rubiel dropping out of the show. Actually, I was speaking with his coach. I'm going to be doing a video on that as well. He'll be shutting it down for the season after 5 shows now in a row that he decided not to do, unfortunately. But hey, we got some excitement for the Prague show, that's for sure. There's still a couple of good shows yet this season. Romania is coming up. We've got Horse MD. We've got Rafael Brandau doing that. Akeem Williams, who is
Yep.
looking absolutely ridiculous in that last. I don't know if you saw the update from Akeem there. Actually, you did.
Yeah,
I think I saw it on Heavy Muscle Radio this morning.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah, we showed it. Yeah, Chris works with him, so yeah, he looks good. Yeah, I think that these guys are smart. They're hitting these shows. I always tell people, I don't know why these guys don't do the European tour after the Olympia because they're good. It's a good opportunity to make some money, to make good connections, to qualify for next year, and Samson hit all those shows last year. I wouldn't be shocked if we saw Samson at a couple of these shows this year because why not make a few bucks for himself? He obviously stays in shape. He holds on. He's done a lot of shows every single year for the last couple of years, and he hasn't. It doesn't seem like it's hurting his physique at all. If anything, it might be helping it.
No, I think it might be absolutely. Samson's actually in China right now doing guest posings over there in a
Mm-hmm.
part of the world that is not well known to be a bodybuilding hub when it comes to competitors. So even him going somewhere like that where you don't see a lot of bodybuilders trying to promote the sport in an area like that directly after he wins the Olympia, the guy could have went
Yep.
anywhere. He goes to China. Kareth Bajo, yeah, somebody must have offered him a couple of bucks. You're
Yeah.
right about
I,
that.
I I think so. Yeah.
Now, even Kareth is staying on that circuit. He's actually going to the Japan Pro in order to qualify for next year's Olympia. So I mean, it's
That's
smart.
smart. Yeah,
It
smart.
is. It's
Yeah.
smart. Yeah, no, he announced that on my last podcast that we did with Bob and Xavier. So it is a very good business move, and of course, being able to go somewhere in the world that you've never been, obviously a benefit there. And these guys, I agree, they got to get out there on the circuit. But no, it is very interesting to see some of the post Olympia stories that are coming out here with Chris, and now I've actually got an update I'll be doing on Rubiel here coming up, but still some excitement left. Still some excitement left. Dave,
Absolutely.
I appreciate you taking some of the time to come and speak
My
with me
pleasure.
here. And actually, funny, I'll be in Florida. Well, for Christmas this year, I'm traveling for 2 weeks at Christmas to be able to get down there. So
Get away from the
yeah,
cold.
yeah, man, it is fucking freezing up here. Let me tell you. Although I don't know if you know, I'm a commercial diver. I own a commercial diving company here, and the
I didn't
water
know that.
is yeah. So that's what I do for a living. I took
Where are
over
you
from my
located?
father. I'm located on the eastern seaboard. I'm in Nova Scotia,
Oh,
in
okay.
Cape Breton. Yeah. So being here in the North Atlantic, you wouldn't think, but the water's still, man. No. I know you would expect it to be fucking
Listen,
freezing right
let
now.
me tell you something. I'm going to make you laugh. So I have a swimming pool, right? And I like to swim laps at night. I don't know why I go and swim laps at like 11:30, 12 midnight. Okay. So we had a hurricane here, like, a few weeks ago and
Oh yeah.
during the Olympia, actually. And so for some reason, the water in the pool is cold and I haven't put the heater on or anything like that. And it's a little chillier at night where before it was like 85 at night. Now it's like 75, 70 sometimes. So I'm like, you know what? Screw this. So I bought a wetsuit. What do I know about a wetsuit? I bought it on teamu.com. That's my new site to go to because everything's cheap on there. And I have this like
Yeah.
jet black wetsuit I put on. I think I'm like a diver. I got my goggles and I jump in the pool and I swim with the wetsuit on, which is great because, as you know, it keeps you more buoyant. Plus, it warms you up, because it has I didn't know the mechanics of it, but my friend explained it to me that there's like a little layer of water in there and it warms up from your
Exactly.
body temperature and it keeps you warm and it works. And so I can't even imagine what you must have to go through. Just jumping in the water. When I first jump in, I'm like, it's so cold until I swim a few laps. But you're jumping into the ocean. It's got to be brutal, I'm sure.
So this time of year, typically you'd be right, it'd be cold. It's actually still very, very warm, especially in the lakes. I was
Oh, really?
underwater last week. Yeah, three hours and 2 minutes. We have a project we're
Wow.
doing. There's a wharf construction
Crazy.
job that we're doing for a gypsum mine, and we're doing an underwater welding project there. So underwater
Wow.
welding is not something that's typically a lot of movement, and you rely on your movement to regulate some of your body heat in the colder water temperatures.
Hmm.
Welding, you're stationary.
Right.
I was wearing garden gloves in the middle of October, still this time of year, and my
Really?
hands were warm. I got one of my divers that's still diving in a wetsuit. And in this time, it's unheard of, man. It's unheard
So,
of.
so what if you don't use a wetsuit? What do you use? Like, is there a better than a wetsuit?
Yeah, dry suit.
Oh, I don't. Is it? I don't know the difference. So I'm ignorant. So dry suit. What? Lets no water into the suit at all.
That's the theory. Dry suit is kind of a relative term depending on the condition of your wrist and neck seals and what type of seals you have. There's latex
Gotcha.
seals, there's neoprene seals. But yeah, I stay pretty dry. You can also get hot water suits similar to what they use in space, where it just continuously pumps hot water through your system.
Oh, I
Um,
didn't know that.
as long as it keeps working. I've been on projects in the middle of February, laying 20,000 pound scour pads for wharf construction projects, and I had
Wow.
our machine. I paid Dave. I paid $20,000 for this machine. It shut down in the middle of my dive.
Oh my God.
So the procedure is get your ass back to the ladder as fast as you can, and hopefully they
Right.
fire up the machine before you're done. So I had a couple of instances where I was on my way back, and halfway
Yeah.
back, of course, the machine fires up. It's like, okay, go back to work.
How deep down are you going when you're doing these jobs?
For what we do for inshore diving, the money is actually made between 30 and 50 feet. So it's not as deep as people actually think, right?
Right.
Wharf
Right.
construction, ship husbandry, underwater welding, salvage, scientific data collection is something that we do a lot of for federal
Wow.
government, provincial government. So
Interesting.
we don't have to go very deep.
Yeah, it's still risky. Do you ever like freak out, or are you one of these guys that's super cool under pressure?
Ah, my father started this company when I was 4. I've been diving since I was 11.
Ah,
Like I'm good to
wow.
go. Yeah,
Yeah,
I love
that's
it.
great.
Honestly, we did an Arctic job there a couple of months ago before everything started freezing over, and we
Right.
had to fly gear up to the Arctic, met it up there, set up in a sea can to
Wow.
do some burning of some steel under. Like yeah, it's an interesting job, man.
Could you have found some place in a warmer climate to do some diving and welding? You got to pick the coldest possible place you can go to.
It's where the money is, man. They're paying.
I guess, yeah, I guess.
No,
Whatever
you're
pays the
really not.
bills, right?
Hey, and yeah, it's good right now. Between diving and I've got a fleet of boats too. I'm like Big Ramy. We don't fish, but I do have a fleet of boats to be in aid of our diving operations, or they do
Really?
have their own. Yeah, yeah, it's its own standalone service as well. I
So-
came to YouTube because I've always had an extreme love for bodybuilding. Diving and
Right,
bodybuilding, where you have a physiological effect on you from
right.
diving, right? By accumulating
Mhm.
nitrogen in your tissues. It doesn't line up with, anabolics and low body fat percentages, things like that.
I didn't think so.
But I've always
Yeah,
had an extreme love for competitive bodybuilding, and I didn't have an outlet for that. I
yeah,
trained at home. Even when I was training in a public gym, there was no one around. What brought me here was just I needed an outlet, so I just started making
right.
videos, and this
No,
is
you're
this is where
doing
I
it.
ended up.
I tell people you always need another thing that you're passionate about, because if you don't, then when the one thing that you're doing goes wrong, you have no place to go to release that stress or tension or whatever's going on. So it's always good to have two things to go back and forth to. And I've always had that my whole life, at least two things. Usually it's more than two things. And so you're doing it right. Look, you're doing a good job, and I like what you're doing, and that's why I came on the podcast.
No, I really appreciate it. I've been following you for quite some time. I know the one thing you always said was multiple streams of revenue, and well, that is
Right.
something I can tell you full well. I bought into a prepared meals business with some other family members, so
Great.
we have that as well. It's
You know,
it did rub off on me a little bit, man.
yeah, I'll tell you, it's funny. I was watching something about from one of a billionaire was doing this like speech, and he said, I don't believe in multiple streams of income. I believe being all in. He goes, if you want to make a lot of money, you got to be all in on one thing. And I do believe that. I do believe that. But my goal is not necessarily to be a multi billionaire. My goal is to live well, and to like what I'm doing. So a lot of people make a lot of money, but they hate what they're doing. So I love what I'm doing. So I have multiple things that I enjoy doing, and I'm making multiple streams. So I'll always have something coming in. I don't have to be the richest guy. I don't have to be Elon Musk. I just want to not have to worry about money. And so there are two schools of thought. Some people have to be they have to make the billion. They have to be the richest guy. If that's not your goal, and you just want to be happy and enjoy what you're doing and make a really good living from it, then you do what I suggest people do, which is multiple streams of income, doing things that you enjoy doing.
If you're doing something that you enjoy doing, then you'll have no problem getting out of bed every morning.
That's right.
You know,
That's right.
look, you're going to have your days just like anything else where you're going to have to drag your ass down there. And there's some days in the middle of the winter where I don't want to go break ice at the bottom of the ladder to get into the water. Let me fucking tell you. But I do it. And the next day, even that dive, it could
God
be.
bless you, man. Thank
Not
God
so
I
bad.
don't have to do that. That's all I know. You know.
You'd love it. I got a call from a client about an effluent pipe. Yeah, an effluent pipe, a shit pipe that they want us to work on next. So we'll be doing contaminated diving. Yeah,
You should
that's the
bring
good
Greg
stuff.
Valentino with you. Greg Valentino would love that.
I was thinking about getting a hold of John Livia. He's got some experience there.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, no, I couldn't imagine Greg Valentino on a dive site. Man, I'd never be able to get him to pass the fucking medical.
Yeah, well, he would be afraid to go. He'd be afraid to go on the boat to begin with, so that you'd never get him on there
Oh
probably. So
God. No, we,
anyway,
we
but
actually do
I
have to pass a
appreciate.
medical.
How you doing? Yeah,
It,
Greg's in great shape. He's in very good shape. He doesn't have a gallbladder, but he's in very good shape.
Yeah, my doctor's a tough cookie when it comes to the diving medical, let me tell you. But
Yeah.
yeah, no, it's a life of adventure, man. It certainly is. But listen, Dave, I'll let you go here. I do appreciate you coming on and giving your insight here. I still think that there's more conversations to be had about this, cut
Sure.
round or elimination round idea. And we'll look at following up here, get through the rest of the 2024 season, and go from there.
Yep. Sounds good. Thanks for having me.
All right, thank you. That'll do it for another episode of the Bodybuilding Breakdown. We'll see you guys next time.